The night smelled of rain and perfume, two scents that didn't belong together but somehow filled the city each time the wealthy gathered to congratulate themselves. In a small laundry room 3 miles from the glittering lights of the Regal Hotel, Clara Bennett folded the last white shirt of the evening. Her fingers were raw from bleach. Her back ached from standing since dawn. She worked for the Hales, a family known for their money and for reminding everyone of it. They would be at tonight's charity gala, laughing beneath chandeliers worth more than Clara's entire apartment building. "Clara, don't forget to press Mr. Hale's cufflinks," the housekeeper called. "I already did," she answered, slipping the silver pair into a velvet box. When the limousine pulled away from the mansion, the world fell quiet again. Clara sat at the kitchen table looking at the invitation that had come in the wrong envelope, a heavy cream card embossed with gold. Hale Foundation Annual Gala, a celebration of legacy. She'd found it tucked beside the grocery list that morning. Someone at the printer had mixed up the mail. For an hour she stared at it, tracing the raised letters with her finger. The words legacy and charity mocked her. Then she folded it neatly and placed it in her apron pocket. Later, when the rain began, she went for a walk. The lights of the hotel shimmered like another world across the river. She had no intention of going inside until she saw the boy. He stood near the entrance, no more than 8 years old, wearing a tuxedo too large for his small frame. He was crying quietly, a lost child among people who didn't stop to notice. Clara approached slowly. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" He wiped his eyes. "I can't find my dad." "Who's your dad?" "Mr. Hale," Clara froze. "Her employer." Impossible. Yet the boy's eyes, pale gray and frightened, looked like the man's. "Let's go inside," she said gently. "We'll find him together." The doorman moved to stop her, soaked maid uniform, no invitation, but the boy grabbed her hand. "She's with me," he said firmly. The guard hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, chandeliers blazed above marble floors. Music swelled from a string quartet. The wealthy glittered in sequins and arrogance. Clara wanted to disappear, but the boy tugged her toward the main hall. When the crowd noticed her, wet dress, calloused hands, the servant out of place, whispers spread like fire. She felt their stares, each one sharper than glass. "Mom!" the boy shouted suddenly. His voice echoed through the ballroom. Heads turned. The orchestra faltered. At the top of the staircase, Ethan Hale, billionaire heir to the Hale fortune, stared down at them. "What did you just say?" he asked the boy. "Mom?" the child repeated, running to him. "This is my mom." Gasps rippled through the guests. Cameras flashed. Clara stood frozen, unable to speak. Ethan's fiancée went pale beside him. The boy clung to Clara's waist. "She's the one from the picture, Daddy, the lady in the frame in your office." Ethan descended slowly, confusion turning to disbelief. "Where did you get that idea?" The boy looked up, innocent and certain. "Because you said she's the reason I'm alive." The room fell silent. Clara's heart pounded. She wanted to deny it, to run. But Ethan's expression shifted from anger to something softer, haunted. 10 years earlier, the night sky over Hale Airfield pulsed red. A private jet had skidded off the runway and hit the fence. Clara Bennett, then a cleaner working the late shift in the hangar, heard the explosion before she saw the flames. She ran before she thought. Her shoes slipped on the oil-slick concrete. Heat clawed her face. The pilot's door jammed. She used a crowbar to break the latch. A young woman's scream cut through the roar of burning fuel, then the cry of a baby. Clara crawled through the smoke. She pulled the infant free first, wrapping him in her jacket, then dragged the mother toward the open field where security lights glowed. When the ambulance arrived, she was coughing so hard she could barely speak. The medics took the baby from her arms, and one whispered, "He's breathing. You saved him." By morning, she was back at work, washing soot from her hands. Nobody asked her name. A supervisor thanked the maintenance crew, and that was all. A week later, she was transferred to the Hale mansion as a maid. Quiet promotion. No explanation. She never saw the child again. Only heard rumors that the young mother hadn't survived. As Ethan Hale stared at Clara in the ballroom years later, that buried night flickered behind his eyes. He remembered the story his father once told him. A woman saved you from the fire. We never learned who she was. The boy's small hand stayed wrapped around Clara's. The crowd waited for Ethan's reaction. Slowly, he nodded, eyes misting. "Then I think I finally owe someone a thank you." The moment Ethan took his son's hand and led Clara from the ballroom, the noise returned, shouts from reporters, the metallic buzz of phones, the orchestra stumbling to a stop. Guests whispered as if witnessing scandal made them holy. Outside, flashes followed them to the limousine. Ethan's fiancée, pale with anger, refused to join him. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "Do you even know who she is?" He looked back at Clara, still clutching the child. "Maybe for the first time," he said. By morning, every headline screamed Billionaire's secret connection to former maid. Clara's phone rang until the battery died. Reporters. Strangers. Even her landlord wanting rent early now that her name was in the papers. At the mansion, Mrs. Hale's voice was cold. "You've embarrassed this family. Pack your things." Clara tried to explain she hadn't done anything, but security was already waiting. She left quietly, carrying one small suitcase in the memory of the boy who had called her mom. Ethan spent that morning behind locked doors, replaying the footage on every news site. The camera had caught the boy's words, his own stunned face and Clara's protective instinct. Something about her composure nagged at him. He opened an old family file, records from the accident that had nearly killed his son. In one photo, blurred by smoke, he saw her, the same woman pulling a baby from a wreck. His throat tightened. He called his assistant. "Find Clara Bennett." Clara, meanwhile, had returned to her small apartment on the city's south side. The mailbox overflowed with bills. On the counter sat the crumpled gala invitation that had changed everything. She stared at it until her eyes burned. Then a knock came. When she opened the door, Ethan stood there, drenched from rain. "We need to talk," he said. She folded her arms, wary. "About what?" "About the night you saved my son." The rain hadn't stopped since the gala. It came in steady silver lines that blurred the city into watercolor. In her one-room apartment, Clara Bennett sat at a small table, the unpaid bills spread like confession papers before her. The single lamp flickered every time thunder rolled. She told herself she'd sleep, yet her eyes stayed fixed on the cracked paint of the door. A knock came. 3 hard raps that made the glass rattle. She thought it was the landlord again. Instead, when she opened the door, Ethan Hale stood in the hallway, soaked to the bone, his tailored suit plastered to him, hair dripping rainwater onto the floor. For a moment, neither spoke. "You shouldn't be here," she said at last. "I had to see you." His voice carried the strain of too many sleepless hours. "I need to know what really happened that night 10 years ago." Clara crossed her arms, the instinct of someone who'd been questioned too often by people with power. "You already decided what happened," she said. "The newspapers seem to think I'm your family's secret scandal." Ethan stepped farther inside. "I don't care what the papers think. I remember a story about a woman at the airfield fire. My father said she pulled my son from the wreck, then disappeared. You were that woman." The words landed like a weight she had carried too long. "Why drag that up now? You didn't care before. I didn't know before." His tone cracked, part shame, part disbelief. "When I saw my son call you Mom, I realized I'd built my life on people I never even saw." Clara turned away, wiping her hands on the dish towel. "Seeing doesn't change anything, Mr. Hale. It won't pay the rent or feed the next person you forget." He looked around the small room, the chipped mug on the counter, the photograph of her own son who had died young, the signs of years of quiet endurance. "Then let me change something," he said. "Let me help." "Help?" She laughed once, a dry sound. "You want to help because you're guilty. Guilt fades, Mr. Hale. Hunger doesn't." For a moment only the rain answered. Then he placed a folder on the table, hospital reports, photos, a security log from that night. "You refused any reward," he said softly. "You walked away. Why?" Clara touched the folder but didn't open it. "Because the woman who burned to death in that plane was your wife," she whispered. "And no amount of money was going to buy my silence about how poorly that plane was maintained." "I didn't want blood money." Ethan's face blanched. "You knew?" "I was cleaning the hangar that week. I saw the fuel leak. I told the foreman. He said, 'Don't bother the Hales with nonsense.'" The truth fell between them like broken glass. Ethan sank into the lone chair. "All these years I blamed fate. It was negligence and I was too busy signing contracts to notice." "You asked why I left after the fire," Clara said. "Because your company sent me a non-disclosure agreement instead of a thank you." He closed his eyes, the realization carving new lines into his face. Then I owe you more than an apology. I don't want an apology. Her voice softened, exhaustion replacing anger. Just make sure no one else gets buried for being invisible. Ethan nodded slowly. I will, but I need your help to do it right. Morning bled into the city like smoke after rain. Ethan Hale hadn't slept. The lamp on his desk burned low, throwing amber light across the same folder Clara had refused to open. He'd read every line through the night. The maintenance report, the blank accident form, the grainy photo of a woman in coveralls carrying a baby through fire. Her face was turned away, but the shape of her hands was unmistakable. He loosened his tie, took one last gulp of cold coffee, and called his assistant. Get me the original air crash files, he said. Everything that never made it to court. The man hesitated. Those are sealed, sir. Unseal them. I own the company that buried them. By the time the elevator doors closed, the sun had climbed above the glass towers. Ethan drove himself to the hospital where his son's life had begun twice. Once in birth, once in rescue. The pediatric ward hadn't changed much. Same pale tiles, same smell of antiseptic and stale air. A nurse recognized him instantly, hand flying to her chest. Mr. Hale, what a surprise. I'm looking for the intake records from the crash 10 years ago. The infant from Flight K-74. Her smile faltered. I remember that night. There was a woman, came in black with soot, wouldn't give her name. Ethan felt the words land. What did she say? She said she had to get back to work before her shift was noticed. She left her jacket for the baby. It had initials stitched inside. The nurse disappeared into the archive room. When she returned, she carried a clear plastic envelope. Inside was the small jacket, edges singed, zipper half melted. Through the smoky fabric, he saw faint letters stitched by hand. C. Bennett. He touched the cloth. It was rough and warm from her body once, the same hands that had lifted his son out of fire. For the first time since the gala, he felt tears sting his eyes. Do you want to take it, sir? The nurse asked softly. No, he said. I came to give it back its story. He left the hospital and drove straight to the company archives. Dust rose as he opened boxes stamped confidential. Memos, inspection logs, the maintenance complaint form signed by Clara's supervisor. Ignored, then marked resolved without action. His chest tightened. Every signature below it was his own chain of command. He saw the timeline clear as glass. Clara reported the leak. The warning was dismissed. The jet burned. His wife died. And he'd turned grief into empire while the truth sank quietly under paperwork. Ethan sat back, staring at the city through the archive window. The glass reflected two versions of himself. The man who'd profited from forgetting and the man who had just remembered. He picked up his phone and typed a single message. To Clara Bennett, I found the truth. I won't hide it again. He pressed send, then looked at the small burned jacket one last time. The sun slipped behind a cloud, and the office filled with soft gray light. For the first time in a decade, he felt the weight of silence lift.